The following podcast is being brought to you by the Defy Life Podcast Network.
Welcome to Aftergate, powered by the Defy Life Network. Aftergate is a podcast series highlighting Colgate alum of color and their professional endeavors aftergate. Aftergate is hosted by myself, Alvin Glimpf, aka Al, and Ewan Dubois, aka Jerry. We are doing Aftergate because Colgate University has produced innovators who change the world every day. Yet many alums of color and the mainstream Colgate community are unaware of the amazing accomplishments of alums of color.
If you're into all things comics, you have to check out Take a Knee for Marvel vs. DC, your go-to podcast for comic and superhero discussion, debates, polls, and more. Tune in as Regular Scott and Ozzy Killmonger chat about your favorite comic topics, and you never know who may show up for an open mic or what will be next on their favorite One Gotta Go. Take a Knee for Marvel vs. DC, every Sunday, powered by the Defy Life Podcast Network.
Welcome to another episode of Aftergate. I'm your boy Alvin Glimpf. I'm here with my co-host. What's up, Jerry? How you doing?
What's good, my peoples? Checking in live from the MIA.
Yes, sir. Doing good. Good to hear your voice.
Appreciate you.
So we are here. We have a special guest, brother who was there, who helped shepherd us when we were freshmen. And it's an honor to have Mr. Jeffrey Williams. What's up, brother? How you doing?
I don't know about shepherding. I don't know if you. I don't put that. Don't blame me for all the problems.
Nah, bro, you was one of them guys who help us see the way.
Yeah.
and we appreciate it. At the end of the day, when we were up on campus, brothers that were ahead of us, for freshmen coming in, y'all modeled a certain way of being, and we took note, and we did it our own way, like y'all did it your own way. But it was definitely appreciated that y'all kind of took us under your wing. So
it was one of those things that the class, a couple classes before us did that for us. And then we did that. We just passed it down, sort of just that ladder that you went through, sort of. So it was sort of natural. We were anxious to do that, because the class is ahead of us. And for some real strange reason, it worked that it skipped the class. So the classes that we were close to, the classes to when we were sophomores, they were seniors. We were real close with that group. When we were seniors, we were close to your class. And It's just funny how it worked out like that.
Yeah. Guess you got to get a year or two under your belt before you can start mentoring.
Exactly. Because you're lost up in Colgate for a couple of years. I mean, you hit their freshman year, you don't know what the heck is going on. But
I think it's referred to as self-discovery.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of self-discovery.
It is definitely self-discovery going on. A lot of self-discovery up there.
I mean, you saw a lot of people come and a lot of people go by the end of freshman year.
Not everybody was cut for that for that experience.
So let's go back to that time. So give us a sense of when you came into Colgate. What was life like for you, and like coming from Minnesota? What was life like there? And then when you get on campus, give us a sense of what that life was like.
It was interesting because first off, nobody knew there were Black people in Minnesota. So I was like, outside of Prince, they knew Prince was there. So they couldn't tell you anybody else. Kirby Puckett, if they're a sports fan, they knew Kirby. So I was the first Black person they met, and out at Colgate, majority of students of color come from New York, so
at that time,
at that time, at least, at that time, and so they didn't they never had the opportunity to meet anybody out from the Midwest. You know, and Minneapolis is about a 1,200-mile journey from Colgate.
Wow.
Maybe a little less than that, but it's you know, so just it was sort of rare. So I was sort of fortunate because I was able to. My roommate Loxley Douglas was part of.
Loxley.
Yeah, you remember Lox?
I remember Loxley.
Lox. So he was part of that whole summer group. So he knew people already. And so I sort of just rolled in and got clicked up with that whole summer group that was there. So I immediately had friends. I also came in and I walked on the football team. So I got to, you know, meet people that way too. So I sort of dove right into everything. I didn't have that, you know, that I wasn't scared. You know, I didn't have to really sit and meet people because it just naturally flowed, and I was fortunate about that. I think if I would have went in there from Minneapolis and not, you know, been maybe up in East Hall or something like that, and not play football, and had to go out and meet on my own students of color and find out what was going on, it might have been a little harder. But the nice thing about Colgate at that time was there wasn't a lot of people, students of color. So you once you found out where they sort of met up, which was HRC at the Harlem Renaissance Center,
right.
You just knew where you could go, and they were all after, you know, about 5 o'clock around dinner time. All of them would be there. So, you know, and it was cool. You hang out, you go, you eat in the dining hall, you go back out after dining hall, you hang out, you know, in HRC, and then, you know, then you're supposed to have gone study. You know, I didn't get that memo quite. It took me to my senior year until I got that memo that, you know, that you're supposed to go study after you hung out. So, but
so let me ask you this: do you remember? So we talking mid '80s.
Yeah.
Do you remember, just in terms of our country, in terms of our society, like what kind of sticks out in terms of what the world was like? Any major incidents?
we were in the Reagan era. Reagan, and then let's see. So 80, he went out in '88. So so he's pretty much the Reagan era. Uh, you know, you know, I'm not a fan of Reagan, but there wasn't a lot of drama like we have now during Reagan, but it was old school conservatism where, you know, the trickle down economics, and you just there it's kind of weird because in his time, I'm trying to think of some major. The big thing that I remember was that Pan Am flight that was blown up, and we had you know, there's a Colgate student on there. And
oh wow.
Yeah, John Flynn. I used to play basketball in the gym with him after, you know, after classes, and so you know, that was one of as far as like a national or international type situation, that was kind of the main thing that I remember. But you know, Reagan, it was just good old fashioned American conservatism. You know, I got mine, you get yours type of thing. And it was sort of that time period where everybody was trying to go into business and go onto Wall Street because you were, you know, if you got a job on Wall Street coming out of Colgate, you were making some good dollars. So that was kind of the, you know, the thing. But you know, now back then there wasn't a whole lot of major social justice going on like you know, this is kind of a weird point in time that, you know, our generation kind of, we were the ones that benefited from the social justice of the 60s, 50s, and 60s. And we sort of fell asleep on it for a while. Now the generation behind us is like, yo, things aren't quite right in America, you know, and they're picking it up and moving with it. So it was kind of a weird place and time where, um, you I think we were a little bit too comfortable in the 80s, you
Gotcha.
When you look back at sort of your time at Colgate, you started talking about walking on to the football team. Would definitely love to hear a little bit about, sort of what inspired you to do that, because, Colgate still promotes a pretty competitive D1 program that they do a lot of recruitment for, and I know you also did some track. And what would you look back as your accomplishments at Colgate while you were there on and off the field?
I think what I was pretty active, and in high school I was very active and involved in things. And I wasn't the type that could just sit around and not do anything. So, my main thing with the football is one of those sort of challenges to myself, that because I walked on, I was pushing 120 pounds. And I think that's with the equipment on. I was like, I was pushing. And I remember the trainer, when he weighed me, he kind of gave a little smirk, and everything. But he was trying to keep I know he was trying to keep from laughing, but he weighed me and clicked that thing up to about 120 pounds. And it's like, okay, we got it. And, but it was more of a challenge because I said I was going to play Division I football. And, I played in high school. I did all right in high school, but I was going to do Division I football. And I wasn't crazy enough to do 1A. Back then it was 1A and 1 double. Yeah. I wasn't crazy enough to do 1A because that would have, so I said Colgate would be cool. They had a big program, but it was small, so they were playing with the big boys. We played Army, Syracuse, some Rutgers, I think, but it still was that sort of small Eastern football school. So, and I went out there and I hung my own freshman year. And I hung my own. I played the junior varsity, and I got on the field a lot. I got on the field. For some strange reason, I think really what they moved me to defensive back. So I was a defensive, and I came in as a receiver. And okay. They were thick at receiver. They were short at defensive back, and they moved me to D-back. And I really think they're doing that so I get beat up and quit. They're trying to test me out and see. But I stuck it out, and I JV I played a lot, and that was the time they had some good freshmen like Juan De La Rosa, Tony Horn, who were and mainly they sort of bounced back and forth between varsity and junior varsity. So I was sort of the fill-ins for those guys. But but it was fun. I had a lot of fun that freshman year, playing football. Track was my main sport. But my problem with track at Colgate, and it was the same in Minneapolis, but it was even more in Colgate. Colgate is cold for more than half the year. And I'm from Minnesota. I know I'm supposed to like the cold, but I don't do the cold. I couldn't. So the work ethic wasn't there for most of the time because I just could not motivate myself to get out into that cold and run for 15, 20 minutes. And that was when I first got there, they didn't have the field house. They had this old wooden track, cinder block track in the back. And you were training outside for, about four months of the year in the snow. So, but when they got the field house, it was a lot better and everything. But, so I was doing track. I did, it took me a while. I realized that I was a good relay guy because I could run curves and all that. So I was better on the relays than the individual beats. But at my senior year, I didn't end up running because I became the basketball manager, and which was interesting. We got to travel a lot, and sorry as hell, man. It's sorry, but and it's a shame because the dudes were they they balled and they tried and everything, and they're actually improved, but it was just uh, the Northeast Conference we played in. They had some dudes that were Reggie Lewis,
Mm-hmm.
who was
Went to the Celtics.
but yeah, Celtics, and he ended up, I forgot how he died before. He didn't get to play. He ended up dying. Some, I forgot how it was. They had another dude, what's the face over in Irving, Kyrie Irving's dad.
Mm.
He was balling back there. Kyrie Irving's dad. So they had that. It was a tough little conference, and Colgate was, we had a lot of, they had a lot of good role players, but they needed that one superstar, and they just didn't have it back then. Now they didn't have any Jordan Burnses back then, or Donald Foyle. Donald Foyle came, a few years later.
Right.
But that's how that was.
And so, off the field, did you feel there were your activity or achievements on campus, live up to what your expectations were, what you thought Colgate would be like, and
yeah, because I thought it was like high school. I mean, as far as being, you were able to do what you wanted to do. So I was on the student senate. I represented HRC for the student senate one year. I was on the athletic advisory board, so I was meeting with the dean of the students and the athletic director and all that. And so I did We Funk and the radio, which you guys know about. Had my radio program. It was, well, if you wanted to do it, you could do it. You just had to go out and it just had to find who was doing it and how to get about with it, and then you just participated. So and that was part of the problem. I was doing too much, extracurricular. I had a thick resume, extracurricular, coming out of but
like many of us,
yeah.
Any of that stuff you miss? Anything about Colgate when you reflect that stands out as?
Yeah, because I've been living out in LA for since '97, so past 24 years or so, and it was total the opposite, where where you're used to being able to easily get involved with things. Everything's more shut down when you get out to Los Angeles, because everybody's on their guard. Everybody's like has a gateman and a gatekeeper, and they want you to sort of, go through all these, give you a runabout to try to do anything. So, Colgate, the nice thing about it, it trains you to be active, and it trains you to you could easily just focus on your major and miss all these other sort of little life tools that you pick up. And that's the one thing that Colgate, it just sort of gave you a lot of little life tools. So all those little activities that I did helped me relate with people who weren't just like me, and that does help when you move to a city like Los Angeles, and you have to sort of find your way around and nobody's really there to help you. Mm-hmm. Having those different experiences, really, really pay off in the long run.
So let me ask you, one of the things we do is get a sense of how people just think about non-Colgate issues, right? So we just kind of got a current event question. So I know you're an educator.
Yeah.
You're a teacher. Give me a sense of what life is like now as you, not even from the classroom, just give me a sense of what do we need to do to improve education? Like from give me that take.
So I work in the second largest school district in the country. I work for LA Unified, and it's a lot of it's a big bureaucracy. So what Los Angeles has done was they got away from the neighborhood school, where the school was sort of the center of the neighborhood, and everything sort of evolved around the school. You knew what high school you're going to go to. You knew what elementary school you're going to go to because your brother and your sister and whoever went there, and then you just followed along. You knew what middle school. So there are these little pathways. Mm-hmm. And and you knew your principal because the principal at the high school was that principal for about the past 30 years. So you know who he was, and he knew your family, he knew your mama and all that. Um, and, and I think we sort of got away from that. We got away from that in the 70s when they had to do desegregation, when they desegregated the schools.
Mm.
And there's pluses and minuses to that, I think. So the pluses were that you know, if you're a black or Latino, you have the opportunity to go to a school that had better facilities and better money, better books and all that. The minuses were that sort of ripped apart the communities, you know. So, you know, you had like I said, you knew the teachers, you knew the principals, so they knew all the families in the communities. And now everybody, Los Angeles, the school I teach at, everybody's bused from
Mm.
about a 30-minute trip from the city, from about 10 miles from where they live. So we don't interact with the parents except on certain nights of the year, you know, and because they can't get to, you know, they can't get to us, you know, especially with the traffic in LA. So I think that has been a big part of why some of these schools are failing. Uh, I think the other thing is that there's just not that there's we don't give kids the opportunity to have a variety of experiences. So, you know, they don't go on field trips anymore. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we used to, when we were in elementary school, we'd just go on a field trip, roller skating or to the park or some just sort of things that introduce you to different parts of the community that may not have had any, you know, textbook value to them, but they just introduce you to different parts of the community. Uh, you know, kids don't go on field trips anymore. They don't get to, you know, all the kids are supposed to be on sort of this Ivy League kind of track that all these kids are supposed to hit the Ivy League. And so they have to, this is what the Ivy League kids take. They took, you know, calculus by the time they were seniors. They had, you know, all these languages and everything. Well, if a kid that wants to just be a carpenter or
Hello.
wants to be a plumber, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they're sort of, you know, well, you know, okay, well, we don't, we're not here to teach you that. You got to figure that out on your own. But you know, in the 50s, you had trade techs,
Mm-hmm.
and you would go to a trade tech if you wanted to become a plumber. You go to a trade tech if you wanted to be a welder, whatever, or an auto mechanic. And you know, those are really good paying jobs. So I'm getting my condo remodeled right now, and a lot of stuff I wish I knew how to do myself, but I don't because I just don't have those skills. So I'm paying these folks like thousands of dollars to go do some basic stuff like painting because they know how to etch everything up nicely without having the paint dripping all over. I mean, that's so you can make good money like that. You
Mm-hmm.
know, Los Angeles, they have a lot of immigrants, you know, from like Central America come up, and that first generation, they're out there working hard, painting, you know, cutting grass, do whatever they have to do. Then that second generation, well, they're going in, they're buying restaurants, and they're opening up businesses, and that money's building, you know. So it's I think it is good that we teach the kids about college, but you got to have that, you know, that other track where, you know, I want to fix cars. So don't look down on me because I want to fix cars. Educate me, and you know, and I think that would so kids are sort of made out to be failures
Mm-hmm.
because they can't do well on a test that's geared for a kid going to Princeton, you know. But if you put that if you put that kid give him some blocks and tell him to build something, you know, he's going over there, he makes the creation. And I think we just really need to understand that there's, you know, we got these different kids, these different strokes for different folks. And I think when we do that, that will, I think you'll see more kids wanting to go to school and wanting to achieve.
Yeah, I agree. And the key is the career tech.
Hmm.
You got to infuse and integrate that in, and really give people options. The focus should just be preparing students for whatever they want to pursue
Yep, yep,
after high school,
yep.
and kind of aligning their preparation with their interests, but also exposing them for whatever the future is. Because I think like many of us, who we are now is not who we thought we would be when we were 16, 17,
Yeah.
18. And truth be told, what the world is now is not the world we were being prepared for
Oh
when we were
no, no,
15, 16, 17. And the truth,
no.
that's what we're doing now. We're preparing them for a time that isn't going to look like really what we're preparing them for,
Yep.
but we're just kind of doing our best.
Yep.
But let me take a quick pause because we do have a sponsor. So let's do a pause right here.
So this episode is sponsored by Hope Murals. Hope Murals is a nonprofit that provides adolescent youth with an interactive experience of creative expression via an urban arts platform that stimulates both mental and physical development. Please visit their website at www.hopemurals.org to learn more and find ways you can support the work they do.
So, welcome back, and definitely shout out to our sponsor, Hope Murals. Before we dive back into your next question, Jerry, let me just say this. You can find this show and many other dope shows at the Defy Life Network Podcast Hub, which is www.defylifepods.com. Also, find us on many of your favorite podcast streaming services as well, but definitely make sure you check us out at Spreaker because that's where we are right now. And you can find a lot of dope written content at www.godefylife.com and their branded apparel at defylifegear.com. So definitely want to shout out our Defy Life Network because we are part of the family. So go ahead, Jerry, take it from here. What you
Yeah.
got?
Much love, much love. So, you kind of started alluding to being what you're doing now as a teacher and all, but take us back, take our listeners back to you graduate Colgate. Take us on the journey from then to now, and what are some of those highlights throughout that uh, path to you know the Jeff we know today.
Well, when I finished Colgate, I wanted to go to film school, so I went. I took a semester off. So right after Colgate, I came back to Minneapolis and I took a semester off because I had to wait a semester to start Howard. So I ended up starting Howard and did the film school down there. So that was from about 90. I was there for about 90 to 95. And then the last couple years kind of working on my thesis on and off. But and Howard was it was excellent, um, excellent opportunity. So it was just an experience, excellent experience because it was the total opposite of Colgate. Howard's in the middle of the hood, at least then it was the hood of Washington D.C. Um, wasn't in the country like Colgate. It's a traditionally black university, and so you're talking about 10,000 black folks from all over the world were at Howard, so which wasn't anything like Colgate.
Nothing like
Yeah, so it was the total opposite, and it it was, and I'm glad I had both experiences. So Howard really, Howard was great because I met students who wanted to do film like me, and we sort of bonded and we worked on everybody's projects, and it gave you a different, I think, a sort of a different experience because these were students who, when you grow up, you see white movies. That's the majority. You made back, back in the early '90s, you had Spike Lee was just coming on, so everybody was really eager to uh, see and meet Spike Lee and everything. But that was it. We had the black exploitation movies of the '70s, but then they died off, and then Spike came up, and so he was the only one really who was being very successful, only black person very successful making movies. So at Howard, um, to see all these other black students that were interested in film like you were, it was really it was really powerful. And then to meet black filmmakers who were professors and everything, so it's really powerful. And since then, Howard has really done well
Mhm.
producing, talent. Uh, um, uh, I won't even get into it, but it's Anthony Anderson, Black Panther, who I forget his name.
Brother that just passed away.
That's just passed away. Yeah, he was what. But I don't even want to give. There's a whole lot of Howard grads from that work in the film program and were in the film program, and just, but in general, is they're just doing an excellent job putting talent out there in the film industry. But so that's what I did, and after that, and it was kind of one of those things that I needed money and I needed a job right out of school, so I started substitute teaching. And the substitute teaching, so I did that in Minneapolis, and I was doing some screenwriting, and I got a couple of fellowships for screenwriting, and I was able to still continue substitute teach. So when I moved out to Los Angeles, the first thing I wanted to do, because I wanted to eat, I wanted to pay rent. So I'm not I just wasn't that guy that's gonna live in my car. So I started substitute teaching right away in Los Angeles. And I went to this one school that had a Black female principal. And she saw, a young brother walk in there. She was like, "Oh, we're going to keep you." And, and so I just went there as a substitute and ended up teaching there, getting a full-time gig there for 7 years. And then, that I moved from there, I moved over to my current school that I'm teaching at now. So so the teaching and was one of those things. It goes back to what you're saying. It wasn't something when I was 16, I'd say I was going to be a teacher. It more was one of those things at first, I needed to just pay some bills. But I always worked with kids. I've always, even when I was in Minneapolis during college, summer jobs working with kids, day camps. So that was something sort of natural to me to just be able to work with students, work with kids. And I just ended up sticking the job, and teaching is one of those things. It's sort of like a drug almost, where you first you say every year I say I'm going to quit, I'm going to get off, and I'm going to quit, and then I'm back in there, teaching again, and the thing is, you make these connections with the kids. So I said, okay, I gotta go. So didn't cut it last year. I gotta go back and help so out. Or I want to see. Okay, I'm gonna see this group of kids graduate, and then I'll move on. So it's one of those things. Then the next thing I know, it looked like it's like 24 years.
Wow.
With LA Unified, and it's so really that's been what's been taking up a lot of my time. But I've also been able to do the filmmaking, not as on the grand scale that I would like. Now I'm trying to get bigger and better with it. But I was still able to do my writing. I was still able to, I did a class, taught some kids filmmaking last year, last couple of years, and did some shorts. But so now the direction is, okay, now I want to try to do some bigger and better things with that. But 24 years of teaching it's definitely, you learn a lot. You learn a lot about people. You just, I've seen it all. So there's not one thing you're going to show me that would surprise me. So, and in LA, it's been an experience, but it's been a pleasant experience. Because I was scared at first, to be honest, because I went out there in the 90s. And
Boys in the hood.
Boys, right after that, I was scared to wear red or blue. I didn't know what color shirt I could wear. so I wore a lot of white, and then but once I got in there, and it was like, and I worked up in the hood too, and it wasn't bad at all. It was, kids are kids, and it really, and you have, the helicopters flew over our school all the time, and you had squad cars and police actions and lockdowns, but it's I just sort of figured that's how all schools are,
Right.
Not exactly.
Not exactly right.
Brother's name was Chadwick
Boseman.
Boseman.
I feel so bad forgetting his
Yeah,
name.
yeah. That's why I
Boseman.
wanted to make sure I looked him up so that we
Yeah.
can make sure we got his name right. But the documentary, you want to share a little bit about that at all?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Let me just say,
Okay.
for someone who is working to get into film, TV, telling stories, and to get to a point where I got the nerve to now take that step. It was amazing to have someone who I knew, who I went to school with, who was in that journey, in that, and has actually given me advice. I've called, given me some counsel. So it is not to be underestimated, the idea of being able to see somebody doing something, whatever scale it is, the fact that somebody is doing it and has some experience that you can say, that you can use as inspiration to say, okay, yes, this is even possible. So documentary.
Yeah, I mean, and that's because that's basically what I do with other people from Colgate, from Howard. So right now I'm producing and directing a documentary about a high school football team up here in Minneapolis. That's head coach is, well, he's now a former Minneapolis police officer, but he was when he started coaching about 10 years ago. He was an active duty patrolman. No, excuse me. Let me tell you, it wasn't patrolman. It was active duty SRO, so student resource officer. So he was he was on the force, um, and he started coaching this football team, and now they were a state championship team. They're one of the top football programs in the country. But what makes it so unique is, up here in Minneapolis is where the George Floyd incident took place,
Mm-hmm.
and it is the relationship between the Black community and the Minneapolis Police Department, despite them having a Black chief, has been poor ever since I can remember. And so the George Floyd incident was not anything new. What was new is that it was recorded, and what was new is that uh, even because there've been seven black men in particular who were killed by the police, never caught on on tape like this one was. So there's always been that sort of disconnect between the Black community and the Minneapolis Police Department. So this officer is coaching his alma mater, his football team, and they won the state championship 5 years ago. But they're perennially one of the top teams in the state. So what I wanted to do is document their season after George Floyd and see what was he doing to build relationships between the students and the school he's coaching as is predominantly Black school. So the team is pretty much all Black. And so what's the relationship that he's able to build with this team? And what is he doing that where when you talk to the players and we interview the players, they don't even look at him as a police officer. They look at him strictly as a coach. But if they needed something, they knew where they could go to. So he's built these bridges, and in a community that needs to have built built for them with the police department. And so we followed the team for the whole season. And, on top of that was COVID. So they had to deal with that element. They did not have classes. They did Zoom classes. So they weren't in school the whole year. Um, so the documentary just mainly follows them, but it also gets into those issues on defunding the police and the crime, youth crime, and the relationship between the Minneapolis police and the Black community. So we also get into all those issues as well, and then we sort of put the football season in the middle of that. So we're working on that. We're in post production right now. Hopefully, we want to get it done by the end of the summer, early fall, and get into those festivals that are coming up.
If I may ask, and that's amazing. I'm ecstatic already about wanting to see it. congratulations to that on so many levels, just because, even taking on the idea of producing and directing a project of that scale, I can only imagine, the commitment and the vision to see it through. But then to be able to say, I know the guy who put it together is dope, because I would support the subject matter and the content, no matter who I thought did it, because I think it needs that kind of platform as an athlete and as an activist. But to know that as my homie who did it, even better. But interesting level. If I could ask you, I'm gonna be sitting on a panel next week that's talking about youth and gun violence, and I'd be very interested to hear your take on why do you think there's been such an increase in gun violence amongst youth across the country, particularly Black and brown young men.
Well, the officer who's the coach, he brought this up. He said that he so in Minneapolis, what they did, they took the student resource officers out the school, so they're not Minneapolis police anymore. And he was saying that he still wanted to be football coach, and he thought it was important that the kids had a football season, because that is what kept them off the streets from doing all this shooting and all that. With the schools closed, what happened, that was sort of it sort of unleashed like a bomb, where you had all these, so you're pinning people up, and keeping them inside, telling them, they can't interact with everybody else. So when the weather got warmer, then people got to go out. And when you don't have anything for them to go out and do, they're going to find something to do. Now, when you have a group of kids who don't have anybody showing them what are the proper things to do, they are taking them out. Okay, let's go swimming. Okay, let's go bicycle riding. Let's go out camping somewhere and doing things. And you leave them up to their own resources, and you then, they have access to a gun. So if I'm mad at you about something, and you saw last summer, everybody was mad about something, one thing or another. So if I'm mad at you about something and nobody's really taught me how to release this aggression in a more constructive manner, and I have a gun in front of me, I'm going to use that. And so I think what happened was more that these schools play a very important role, because even the gangbangers go to school, because that they like to socialize, so you can, you still have some of these little, especially the wannabe gangbangers, they will go to school, and they would do, their nonsense, they would, if they did it, sparingly. But schools kind of kept things kept things under the lid. So you take away the schools, and these kids had nothing to do, and they just went out and they showed what, and then the other thing on top of it, and at least in Minneapolis, I think in the larger cities, a lot of the police retired. They retired, or they took post-traumatic stress leaves and all that type of stuff. So our force lost about 200 officers.
Wow.
And up here, the kids know that there's 200 less officers around. So they are like taking full advantage. Car thefts went up, gun violence went up. These violent crime has gone up, because they know that they feel they can get away with it. So I think that, but I think the biggest thing is that these kids don't have a lot of constructive things to do, and nobody's grabbing them up to say, hey, come on in, come hang with me, and we're going to go, we're going to be bicycle riding. I think that's really a lot of it. A lot of it has to do with, one, I think they feel they're emboldened, for whatever reason, coming out of COVID. But a lot of it is just that a lot of the activities were shut down, and we lost a lot of kids because of that.
In my district, and I'm sure a lot of other districts, they refer to it as the wraparound support.
Yeah.
That was lacking. And I mean, just honestly, you just talking about the removal of additional caring adults in people's lives to play that role of um, mentor, counsel, help them deal with conflict, and that's just lacking. So let me ask you this: if you had the opportunity to put a word of wisdom in a young person ear, in their heart, 21-year-old sitting in front of you, whether it's a 21-year-old Jeff, 21-year-old Colgate student, whatever, what would be some words of wisdom that you might share with a young adult?
I would say find older people who are doing what you want to do, and you know, especially when you're 21, people want to work with you. You know, older people want to work with you because they like that idea of mentoring because it sort of makes them feel good. You know, so if you want to, you know, if you want to get into the movies, you find somebody who's in it, to, you know, who's older, who's been experienced in it, and just, you know, volunteer. You know, so that's for
Mm,
I think this generation, and as far as sort of the American way, uh, they want to get paid. You know, so they feel they need to get
mm-hmm,
paid. Um, so when they come out of college, they feel they got to get. "Well, I got to get paid. I got to go get that six-figure job or chase after it." And you know, and I think a lot of things that if you, especially if you're talking about entertainment, uh, if any kid that really wants to get into entertainment, you better suck it up and be prepared to be broke and just
mm,
get in where you fit in, you know, or fit in where you can get in. And I still kick myself to this day. I had an interview with Ice Cube when he was first setting up his film production company. And they actually
mm,
interviewed me to be the story editor, which would have been pretty much the person running the company. I would have been finding the material. Um, but I didn't have the experience. I was only in Holly. I was only in California maybe 4 or 5 months, so I didn't have the experience yet. But so I didn't get the job. In fact, I interviewed with him and Martin Lawrence for their. Martin Lawrence set up his company then too. But
mm,
what I wish I would have done with the Ice Cube, because his manager liked me, and all I had to say is, look, you know, okay, I didn't get the job, but look, let me just come in a couple of days out the week and volunteer. I'll answer phones, I'll get coffee, whatever. I teach school, but I come in after school, and then while he sets it up, let me do whatever you need. I got you.
mm-hmm,
Uh,
mm-hmm.
and if I would have done that, it'd been a totally different thing, because Ice Cube's production company blew up. You know, he blew up before Tyler Perry. You know,
Yep.
so now he has a big deal at one of the studios, I think Sony. But you know, that's one of those things that young kids, especially when you're young and you don't have bills to pay, if you can live at home with your parents, or if you can live with the 4 or 5 roommates, and you just go out there and you do that part-time gig, and then you go do whatever you want. I mean, so same with kids in the sports field. If you want to, you know, you want to be work with one of these pro teams, go out there and say, look, let me just come in and catch balls for you guys, whatever, you know, or answer phones or do whatever. And you just get in and you work your way up, you know. So I think that's it. Just find who you want to be like, and then figure out a way to meet the people who are doing what he's doing, and it's, you know, and don't be ashamed to volunteer.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a combination of people want it now, but I also think part of why they want it now is because that's all they see is the now. They don't really see the struggle.
Yeah, yeah,
And so, understanding that that struggle often is part of the process. But if you can, with, I think your advice of finding older people to help you see the vision to say, okay, this is what you're doing now, but trust me, this is going to pay off because potentially this is what your future could look like. So many young people don't have those people in their life to be able to have them see that long-term picture.
Yeah. You know, and don't be scared to be broke in your 20s, you know, because really, I mean, that's that.
You know, it's interesting because you think about coming out of Colgate, and I was broke through Colgate. So by the time I got out of Colgate and thought, well, now I've got a degree, something I can market and maybe get me a job where I can eat now and I can, you know, have some money in my pocket, still with that desire of wanting it now, but not feeling like feeling like I've done something. And I really realized I hadn't done shit. I had just graduated Colgate. You know, I hadn't gotten any work experience. I hadn't been in the world per se. And, you know, the idea of volunteering or interning and, well, hell, that's just going to get me broker, you know? So it's an interesting dichotomy because it's right. It's that exposure and access to somebody who's already doing it that can really open up doors as long as you can weather that interim time of you know, realizing that you're not entitled. You got to pay your dues. You got to work for it.
Yeah. No,
got to be humble.
Yeah. I mean, because one of the things out here, it was in Los Angeles, the agencies, the big agencies, they get Ivy League lawyers. And what they'll do, they'll take them and they put them in the mailroom. And they're making, you know, back when I first went out there, they put them in the mailroom and they're making like $8 an hour, you know. And so you had to do with, I had a Harvard law degree and a Princeton law degree. They're shacking up with each other, you know, because they're in the mailroom and they can't afford to rent an apartment on their own. Wow. And they're working, you know, 12-hour days. But after about 5 years, they move them up into that junior agent, and then they move them up into the agent, and then they're rolling. So it's just a process, you know. It's like you just gotta. It's one of those things you just gotta trust the process and suck it up, and just don't think that when you're 25 you should be the executive Warner
the CEO.
Brothers, you know, CEO. You know.
Oh man.
You know, but that's one of the things that I feel now that I have a whole nother career ahead of me, where you know, so I had the teaching, and now look, I'm sort of have a whole second act in my life where I can go and be the filmmaker, and you know, it takes time, and some people get lucky, and by the time they're 30, they have the feature. Then other people, you know, a lot of pay your dues, and maybe 50 when you start getting your break or whatever. So.
Everybody's path is different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me, is there anything you would like to promote, share, how people can get in contact with you, what we need to know? Just here's an opportunity to get the word out to the Colgate network, and we want to do our best to make sure everyone listening is leveraged to support your endeavors.
Well, definitely want to get the word out about my film. So we're in post-production. It's called Force of Blue, and it has a website, simple to remember, forceofblue.com. So, you know, raising money for that. So I think there's a button to connect to the GoFundMe. You know, we need a lot of support there. So I learned one thing that, you know, documentaries you think you could do for all the cheap, they're not cheap. You know, that archive footage where, you know, where you're paying like, you know, $100 per second for. So when you watch those documentaries and you see all that archive footage from, you know, whatever, you know, that 10, 15 years ago and all. Yeah. They're paying anywhere between $50 to $150 per second
for that
footage. So documentaries, you know, and the thing with the documentary, you need that. So so we definitely need some support there. If anybody wants to contribute, they can. There's a button on it on the forceofblue.com.
I got you for a hot second, Jeff.
Yeah. Hey, I know. Thank you. I think both of y'all. I got both of y'all. So look, you know, and the thing is, 10, 15, 25, 50, whatever, that all helps out. That all helps out. So, you know, so whatever
Yes, sir.
You know, to get
manifest that, brother.
www.forceofblue.com. We're gonna need all of our listeners, all of the AOC, Colgate, get out there and support our brother, and definitely not just check out the website, but hit the donate button.
Yeah,
and show some love. Show some love.
Show the Force of Maroon how we can support the Force of Blue.
All right. Okay. Anything else, my brother, before we wrap up? Anything?
No, that's it. You know, I appreciate the opportunity. It was great talking with you guys, man. It's just really, Jerry, like I said, man, I haven't seen you since, man, I don't know. But, you know, Alvin came out and we connected in LA a few years ago. And so it's great to see that you guys are doing something, doing great things. And I say just keep in touch, man.
Hey, Jeff, let's definitely follow up after. I got some. I'm going to be working on your next sequel. We got some ideas for you.
Okay, definitely love to hear it. Definitely.
All right, brother.
All right, man.
All right. So on that note, just want to say thank you. Thank you for listening. Really appreciate it. This has definitely been a fascinating conversation. Another great episode of Aftergate. Appreciate you, Jeff. Aftergate, powered by the Defy Life Network. And of course, hear us on all your favorite platforms, but definitely check us out on Spreaker. Always got to shout out interns, Sophia, Kathy, Izzy. Appreciate y'all support. And just check us out as we produce another dope episode to follow. So peace, family. Have a good night.
Yes, sir. Deuces.
Shh. You hear that? Listen closer. That, my friend, is the deafening sound of focus. It drowns out all the useless noise that can clutter the moment. Naysayers don't exist. Haters? Smaters? The peanut gallery? Who's that? When you in your zone, all that noise and all that buzz is just elevator music. So, enjoy your journey, focus on your goal, and bask in the quiet roar that is progress. Because when it's your time to shoot that shot, spit that verse, or close that deal, the only voice that matters is yours. Defy Life.